We did a video a while ago where we talked about who we believed at the time was going to be the new head of the ATF, Kash Patel. Yeah, there was news online that he was going to be the ATF's acting director, and we assumed he could very well become the permanent director too. But boy, were we wrong. We didn't think he'd only be the acting director for a week or so. Now that Patel is out of the running, we have to ask the same questions we asked when Dettelbach stepped down. Who's going to be the new ATF director? And is he pro-second A? In this video, we'll talk about what we believe will be an even better direction the agency might be taking and how it's exciting for all pro-2A individuals. Why does this matter? The ATF's leadership dramatically affect the freedoms we exercise daily, including which firearms we can legally own and how they're regulated. Historically, the agency has never been friendly to gun owners, always pushing policies that frustrate our community. Kash Patel, who we all know as Pro-2A, was rumored to become the new permanent ATF director, but now there's someone else on the horizon who appears to be even more supportive of our cause. His name is Dan O'Kelly, and he's a former ATF insider turned champion of pro-Second Amendment values. His background, combined with his willingness to speak out against overreach, makes him a truly compelling figure. If he's appointed, it will mark a turning point in the ATF's approach. This disrespectful agency will finally start respecting lawful gun owners and focus on busting real criminals. After the buzz surrounding Kash Patel's brief tenure, many of us began to question whether the federal government was simply toying with our expectations. Patel's name circulated widely in pro-gun circles, with rumors swirling that he would permanently lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. That speculation has now faded, and we're seeing something far more interesting: the possible installment of Dan O'Kelly, who spent more than 2 decades inside the ATF and has repeatedly called out its flawed policies. According to multiple sources, including the Tampa Free Press, his nomination could bring real change for law-abiding firearm enthusiasts. Dan O'Kelly's resume reads like a blueprint for someone who truly understands firearms. He started off as a police officer for 11 years, diving deep into street-level crime before transitioning into the ATF for 23 years. During that time, he specialized in firearm technology and recognition, a skill set that placed him in a position to scrutinize the mechanics of what actually constitutes a firearm. Unlike many agency higher-ups, he didn't just sit behind a desk. He got his hands dirty, studying how different components interact and how modern guns differ from older designs. That expertise set the stage for his subsequent advocacy. O'Kelly eventually retired from the ATF in 2011 and founded GunLearn.com, an educational platform designed to teach both law enforcement and civilians about the complexities of firearm regulations. This move placed him in a unique position to hear firsthand from everyday gun owners, as well as from officers who struggled with ambiguous or contradictory directives from the agency. By bridging those two worlds, he recognized the enormous gap between law-abiding citizens trying to follow the law and an agency that often muddled its own regulations. His mission from that point onward revolved around clarifying these legal gray areas. To get a sense of how O'Kelly could reshape the ATF, let's take a quick look at the friction he caused when he challenged the organization's rulings. One incident involved the seizure of thousands of polymer 80% lower receivers in San Diego at Ares Armor. Authorities deemed these items to be legally classified as firearm receivers, a designation that ramped up criminal charges. O'Kelly testified that these components did not meet the legal definition of a functional firearm part. His statements, backed by extensive technical knowledge, led to a dramatic case outcome. The ATF ended up returning a significant number of seized items. Such instances show exactly why O'Kelly resonates with every one of us who's tired of seeing the government twist definitions to fit a specific narrative. He's consistently pointed out that many firearm regulations hinge on vague or outdated terminology, leading to confusion among federal agents, local police, and everyday Americans. In many of his public interviews, he's expressed frustration that well-meaning law-abiding individuals often fall into legal jeopardy because of these gray areas. By pushing for clearer, more consistent definitions, he believes the ATF can finally focus on real criminals instead of entrapping people who have no ill intentions. This frustration also extends to how the ATF interprets and applies laws surrounding semi-automatic rifles, handguns, and specialized components. O'Kelly has commented that the agency sometimes adopts broad stances without properly training its agents, which creates uneven enforcement across different regions. He's seen examples where one ATF branch might declare a particular part illegal, while another branch overlooks it entirely. Such inconsistencies breed distrust among gun owners who aren't sure whether they'll be targeted for an activity that's perfectly lawful in another jurisdiction. O'Kelly's solution involves a massive overhaul of training and standardized protocols across the entire agency. He also doesn't shy away from the political angle. According to interviews, O'Kelly acknowledges that anti-gun administrations often push their directives down the chain of command, forcing the ATF's technical experts to reinterpret laws in ways that favor restrictive policies. When frontline agents receive conflicting guidance, they end up enforcing regulations that may not hold up in court. O'Kelly has indicated that if he becomes director, he'll resist such politicization and ensure that the agency's enforcement is guided by the actual legal text rather than partisan agendas. In his view, every bad act one can commit with a firearm is already illegal. At the heart of his proposed reforms is a commitment to prioritize violent criminals over lawful gun owners. He has repeatedly said that the ATF wastes resources by zeroing in on technicalities that ensnare hobbyists, small business owners, and other nonviolent citizens. By redirecting that energy toward gangs, drug traffickers, and individuals who actively misuse firearms, O'Kelly believes the agency can play a pivotal role in real crime reduction. This Pro-2A approach resonates with our community because it acknowledges the fundamental right to bear arms while making clear that actual criminals still need to be dealt with harshly. In this light, O'Kelly's stance diverges sharply from what we've grown to expect from ATF leadership. It's no surprise that many gun owners are rallying behind him, hoping his appointment marks a new era where clarity prevails and overreach is curbed. Whether or not it happens is anyone's guess, but with a Pro-2A ATF director, we might see a drastic change in the way the agency is ran. By the way, if you're finding this discussion useful in any way, please help our channel grow so we can make more of these types of videos. Click on the like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for more of these videos. Your support means the world to us and helps get this message to others who might be equally frustrated with the status quo and ready for someone to shake things up at the highest level. So going back to O'Kelly, support for this guy also stretches beyond grassroots advocates. Reports indicate that established organizations like the National Rifle Association, the National Association for Gun Rights, and the Second Amendment Foundation view him as a breath of fresh air. Bureaucrats with little to no practical firearms knowledge should never become the director of the ATF. O'Kelly, on the other hand, brings decades of real-world experience backed by a willingness to stand up for gun owners. While some might argue for an outsider unencumbered by the system, his insider perspective could be exactly what the ATF needs to correct its entrenched problems. Even so, his nomination isn't guaranteed. The director of the ATF is still a political appointment, and there are lawmakers who prefer candidates who align with stringent gun control agendas. They may try to block O'Kelly on the grounds that he's too friendly to our community, or that his previous challenges to ATF policies undermine the agency's authority. But in reality, those challenges show he understands the difference between genuine public safety measures and arbitrary rules that punish honest citizens. Should his nomination advance, we can expect a heated debate in Congress where the usual gun control voices will push back. Yet, there's reason to believe he has a fighting chance. In recent years, the public has grown more aware of instances where the ATF initiated raids on small businesses or threatened law-abiding individuals for technical rule violations. These actions have raised eyebrows even among people who might not otherwise engage with Second Amendment issues. As more stories emerge of the ATF shifting definitions in ways that perplex judges and attorneys alike, pressure is mounting for a director who will instill consistent, lawful practices. O'Kelly's reputation as a straight shooter, quite literally, could tip the scales in his favor. Let's remember that if O'Kelly doesn't secure the position, another candidate will likely step in, perhaps someone less transparent or less knowledgeable about how firearms actually work. Some have suggested alternative picks like Brendan Herrera, who, if you didn't know, is a popular YouTuber known for his odd but funny AK-47 builds. If I'm honest though, the likelihood of a high-profile internet figure landing the job is slim. O'Kelly's years inside the ATF give him an edge in understanding the entrenched bureaucracy. He knows where the skeletons are buried and how to unravel decades of confusing policies. That kind of insider experience can be beneficial, provided it's wielded to protect our constitutional freedoms. It's also vital to recall the big picture. O'Kelly repeatedly asserts that enforcing existing laws against violent offenders is the most effective route to safer communities. Most of us in the pro-2A sphere agree that crimes like armed robbery, murder, and assault with a firearm warrant tough legal consequences. We simply object to conflating legitimate self-defense tools with criminal activity. O'Kelly's approach aligns perfectly with this philosophy. Rather than throwing the book at hobbyists who tinker with 80% lower receivers or load a certain type of ammunition, he wants to clamp down on those who use firearms for unlawful violence. On top of that, O'Kelly aims to restore public confidence in an agency that has squandered it for years. He plans to make training resources not just better for agents, but more accessible to the public. Imagine if firearm dealers, gunsmiths, and regular citizens could easily check official ATF guidelines without digging through contradictory memos. This transparency would drastically reduce unintentional violations. People who want to remain compliant would have a straightforward reference rather than a confusing tapestry of special rulings and hidden interpretations. By putting clarity first, O'Kelly sets a course that respects lawful ownership and punishes actual wrongdoing. One might wonder if O'Kelly will attempt to dismantle the ATF from within or if his mission is strictly reform-driven. In one interview, he acknowledged that some members of our community want the ATF abolished. He understands the sentiment, given the agency's history of overreach. However, if abolition isn't immediately on the table, the next best thing could be putting someone in charge who respects the Constitution. The difference between O'Kelly and many of his predecessors is that he isn't looking to expand regulations or conjure up new bans. He's primarily interested in making sure current laws are enforced justly. For those of us who have followed these developments closely, the possibility of Dan O'Kelly leading the ATF signals a remarkable shift. No longer would the agency be synonymous with knee-jerk crackdowns on items that aren't even properly defined as firearms. Instead, we might see consistent rules, transparent processes, and a real focus on violent criminals. This, in turn, could de-escalate tensions between gun owners and the federal government. Whether you believe the ATF should exist at all, having a director who understands and respects our Second Amendment is far better than continuing down the same old path of bureaucratic hostility. Dan O'Kelly's rise from a longtime ATF agent to potential director is a story of someone who genuinely understands firearms and wants to honor the Constitution. If he is confirmed, we'll witness a departure from the typical ATF approach that so many of us have questioned. But what do you think about his chances? Does it change your view of the ATF's future, or would you rather Brandon Herrera be the ATF director? Comment below. Let's get a discussion going. If this video was helpful in any way, please like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for more of these videos. Thanks for watching and stay proud in defending our rights.